Good evening, everyone. This is another regular meeting of the Urbana Community Development Commission, and we have an agenda for this evening's program. With that, I'll now call the meeting to order. Meeting will come to order. And next we have roll call.
Fred Cobb.
Here.
Michael Brown.
Here.
Chris Diana.
Here.
Reverend Freeman. Ann Hines Silvis.
Here.
Karen Hodgen Jones. Jerry Moreland.
Here.
Abdul Hakim Salam.
Here.
James Winston. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we have the review of our minutes. We'll take a couple of minutes to review them, and after which you can express changes or no changes. Anyone need more time? Well, I'd like to point out one error. At the end of the minutes, under adjournment, it says, seeing no further business, Chairperson Cobb adjourned the meeting. Well, I was not here. So, any other corrections or modifications?
I think that Ben Miller is M-U-E-L-L-E-R. And the others present, and then when he spoke, his name was M-U-E-L-L-E-R.
Well, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes with necessary corrections. Here we have a motion to approve the minutes with the necessary corrections. Is there a second? A second. A motion and a second to correct the minutes with the corrections. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. Ayes have it. And minutes are approved as with the corrections. Okay. Next, we have petitions and communications. That's the time in the meeting when anyone out in the audience who would like to bring anything to our attention, now is the time to do that. Does anyone out there have something? Okay. No, petition to communications, that's for written
Right.
notifications.
And no, we haven't received anything.
No written communications. And also for audience participation, there's no audience participation. Next is staff report.
Okay, if you'll turn your attention to the staff briefing that was sent out, showing our activities since our last meeting in April. We received a letter from HUD regarding our official letter regarding our allocations for next fiscal year 18-19, showing that we received increases in both CDBG and our home program, which is good. We have also submitted our annual action plan to HUD for approval. And then once the annual action plan is approved, then we will get an agreement from HUD for those 2 grants, and then we will be able to get our funding. So, and then we have been meeting, started in the last few months or so, we've been meeting with Economic Development Division in our department regarding projects and developments. It's been a really good in meeting with them to discuss what we can do to help them, what they can do to help us. So it's been really good. We've been able to make recommendations to them, say for developers that we've used, and so I think that's a good relationship, because normally we haven't really dealt with economic development. It's been more maybe planning and building safety, depending on what project that we are doing. And then we are working with the Housing Authority on different grants. One in particular is a permanent supportive housing grant, in which they are going to apply to the Illinois Housing Development Authority for this grant, and we'll be putting, I believe, some vouchers into it. So we've been working with them. In fact, we're going to be working on an intergovernmental agreement with them, and we had hoped that we would have had it on the agenda for this evening, but was unable to get that agreement from them in time. So it will more than likely go straight to council in order for it to be timely, because the grant is due like the 20th of July. So we had expected, to really try to bring it here, but they were working on the intergovernmental agreement and staff were out, and so we didn't get it in a timely manner. So, but I wanted to let you be aware of that we're working with the Housing Authority on this grant. We've also been working with the Township Supervisor's Office and Council regarding the Consolidated Social Service Funding process. And I believe it was last night meeting, Council recommended be sent to Council for approval. So that's good. Working on finishing up on fiscal year 17-18 distribution process for social service funding, processing requests, working with Champaign with the Bristol Park redevelopment project that is to close in July. Working with the state for their requirements with budget and their process for the Emergency Solutions Grant. And then, as you can see, Housing Rehab Coordinator, listing of the different projects that he has done, how many have been completed, working on the Abandoned Properties Program with Building Safety and Habitat to continue to identify properties. And so far, 2 projects to date. One has been completed and one in process. And then continuing with invoices and funding requests and processing all those, and then attending the various meetings that we do and webinars. And then I also wanted to let you know officially that Matt is leaving our department and our division and got a job in Wisconsin as a manager up there. So his last day will be July 3rd. And then Don will be moving up to finance. Rather than half-time with us and half-time with finance, he'll be completely moving to finance. So, yeah, that will be the end of the month. So we we'll still see Don, but in a different capacity. And of course, we wish Matt well in his new position. And so in the audience, in the gentleman with the red shirt, is our intern who we are moving up to CD associate to assist us with our projects this summer. So, so that's pretty much the staff report. Any questions?
Where in Wisconsin?
I'm going to be working with the City of Racine in their Housing and Community Development Division.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's going to be a shift, and I really have, I've learned a lot from this community and from all of you on the commission as well. You know, seeing the service that you're providing to this community has been very eye-opening for me, and I've learned a lot from all of you and from my work here, and I really appreciate it, and I'm going to miss it. I really will.
How large a city is that?
What's that?
How large a city?
It's about 78,000 people.
Mhm.
Yep.
Good luck.
I appreciate it. I'll need it. Yep.
Okay, next on the agenda is old business. We have none, unless, does anyone want to bring up any old business? Okay, next, new business. Under new business, we have a resolution certifying a community housing development organization for the Urbana Home Consortium, which is Habitat. Also, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization agreement, which is also Habitat, the developer. So,
I did want to give a little caveat in that, for whatever reason, I must have looked at an older memo. I left the third agreement off of the agenda that is on the memo. And so I contacted the city clerk's office to find out what we needed to do. And they said that it cannot be voted on. However, the operating can be discussed and everybody can be in agreement, but it can't be forwarded to city council for approval. But once the memo and all the agreements get to council at committee of the whole, it kind of starts over, and so we can present all of them. And in the memo, it would state that this was inadvertently left off the agenda, but that the commission was in agreement. So, if you so choose to be in agreement, so. So I think this is the first time I think I have ever left anything off the agenda, and I apologize. So it was a crazy day on Friday. So with that, I'll let Matt talk about the memo and the agreements.
Thank you. The Community Housing Development Organization, CHODO, agreements, we usually bring these before the City Council and the Community Development Commission annually. And this is a statutory requirement of the HOME program. The intent of the legislation that created that funding source requires that 15% of each annual allocation that a participating jurisdiction, in our case, the Home Consortium, receives has to go to local grassroots housing development organizations, not large developers, but groups that are rooted in the community and have a stake in low-income neighborhoods in that community. And it's a fairly rigorous process that these organizations have to go through, and Habitat is the only one that currently satisfies that criteria, and they have applied for the entire 15% set aside of the program year 2017 funds. So this was last year's allocation that they're applying for. We'll be getting another allocation coming soon in August, but this is I guess the most recent current year that we have available. So the total amount of the 15% set aside is $94,467.90, and Habitat for Humanity of Champaign County is proposing to use those funds to create 2 new single-family units. and 1 unit would be in Urbana and 1 unit would be in Champaign. The unit in Urbana would be located at 1118 West Hill Street, and that has been a site where the city has used its abandoned property program funding, which was an agreement that we brought back, I think, maybe last month or the month before. It was a state fund that we were able to use for blight reduction to demolish abandoned, blighted single-family residences. And we used it on 1118 West Hill Street to take down the house there. And now Habitat has acquired the property and is now looking to rebuild on that site with new affordable housing and a home ownership opportunity in the neighborhood. The Champaign site is located in right around West Champaign. It's on Sherwood Terrace, and it's a little bit of a higher amount that they're requesting for that property. And the reason they're requesting a slightly higher amount is that it's expected that the family that's going to purchase it is going to have a child with disabilities where special amenities and accessibility improvements are going to need to be made that go above and beyond what Habitat usually puts into a house. So we're helping to subsidize some of that with a larger direct subsidy. And along with that larger subsidy, it does carry a longer period that we have to secure that 15 years rather than 10 years, where if that family decides to sell, it either needs to go to a low-income buyer or we have to take that money back. So it's more money, but it's also secured more rigorously. Also with the funding that I'm mentioning is operating funding. And operating funding is a little bit differently, and that's the agreement that Kelly mentioned. It's something that we haven't done for about 5 or 6 years. And that's sort of administrative subsidy directly to Habitat to offset some of the costs that they incur that don't go into properties directly, but management and other staffing costs that are still incurred and they still require subsidy in some cases for, and that's what they've requested differently this year as in years past. And that is called CHODO operating, and up to 5% of our allocation can be used for that. So our limit is about $31,000, where Habitat is requesting $14,000. So the options before the Community Development Commission are the usual options. The Commission can forward one or both of the resolutions to the Urbana City Council with the recommendation for approval. Can forward one or both of the recommendations for approval with suggested changes or not recommend approval. In terms of fiscal impacts, the $94,476.90 project amount it needs to be committed by September 30th of 2019 to a certified CHODO. Otherwise, it will HUD will take that money back or will de-obligate it from us. The commitment deadline has been suspended for all funds except the CHODO funds. The 2-year commitment deadline is still in effect for CHODO funds. In terms of programmatic impacts, the construction of 2 new single-family homes and affordable homeownership opportunities is exactly in line with our consolidated plan. With that in mind, staff recommends that the CDC forward both resolutions to the Urbana City Council with a recommendation for approval. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I'm curious about the $7,000 and how Habitat arrived at that particular operating cost number.
So that was historically we have suggested that amount be used on a per property basis, and I'm not entirely sure where that came from. It was before my time, but it does seem like an appropriate amount for the staff costs incurred on a constructing a home. There's quite a bit that goes into it that doesn't show up on the pro forma that they submit with their application.
I think there was a formula, but again, it's been so many years since we've done that that I'm not sure what that formula is.
So that amounts to, it's about 15% of the total amount allocated, which is, so that's different from how you calculate the 5% of what can be allocated? How does that?
Yes.
Because they're
Yeah.
two separate, yeah. Because the
Gotcha.
15% per regulations you have to set aside, the 5%'s optional.
Okay, so 5% of the total can be given for operating costs.
That's right.
Up to, so you can
Up to,
do.
I see.
At one point, I think we had thought about maybe 2.5%.
Because 14,000 of about 95,000 is like 14.8%.
I
But
think-
but it's 5% based on the total amount available.
That's right.
I
The
gotcha.
629,000 total allocation.
Yeah.
There, it's a separate 5% at total of 20%.
Thank you.
Yeah, just like to clarify, I think you said that HUD would take the money back if it is not used.
Not take it back, but de-obligate it.
What
Um,
does that mean?
Right now, we haven't used it.
Yeah,
If we don't execute a legally binding agreement using the 94,000 and change by September 30th of 2019, HUD will take it away from us on their IDIS interface. We would no longer have access to those funds.
all right. Thank you. Anyone else?
Just a very small detail question. On page 2, second full paragraph down, where it's talking up to 5% of a PJ's home allocation.
PJ stands for participating jurisdiction.
Right.
And that's what HUD.
I know what it means, but there's no frame of reference like the other terms.
That's my
Okay.
mistake. I didn't identify what that
Yeah.
acronym is, and
We
I
just probably want to put something in to
Absolutely.
We
identify
will do
that.
that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Either that or we're talking PJs, you know? You know?
Pajamas, right.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to, for these two items. Would someone like to make a motion? We have those three options to recommend, forward it to City Council with the recommendation for approval, or make changes, or to not recommend. So what's the pleasure of the commission? Motion.
I move that we forward these two resolutions to the city council with a recommendation for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to forward these resolutions to City Council with a recommendation for approval. Any comments? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Okay, so you say the third,
The third item, it can't be forwarded to council for approval, but if you are all in agreement that, that it's a good thing, that you're in agreement that, I don't know how to say it.
it's open for discussion, but not a
Open-
formal vote,
Yeah,
basically.
open for discussion. So if you all say, yeah, we're in agreement, then that's okay. We just can't say that it's going to be forwarded to council for approval,
okay.
if that makes sense. First time this has ever happened, so. I guess so maybe asking if there's any discussion about that agreement first, and then, if not, then asking if everybody's in agreement, you could show of hands, or,
I
something.
don't know if we can do a show of hands.
Show of hands.
Yeah, that
in
might be
agreement?
considered a vote.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
So I guess,
Are there
Well-
any questions about the operating? I know, and that was definitely a good question about the amount, and where that exactly came from, and we'll definitely try to do some digging into the archives and try to see where, what the formula was that was used to arrive at that amount. But
Yes.
if there are any other questions, we can definitely get in touch with Habitat as well too. We're happy to entertain anything. Otherwise, we can just write in the memo to council that, that they're,
That the commission was in agreement with this agreement.
Right, we found nothing negative.
or
regarding-
something, it's something
Yes.
along those lines, yeah.
Mhm.
Right, and also, there's no better use of the funds that I can see.
I would certainly agree, the operating budget piece has been a companion piece to the others for as many years as I've been around here. It kind of makes sense and makes a complete fit out of the project, which would seem like both a logical and a positive thing to do.
Okay, all positive comments. Okay, with that, that exhausts our agenda for this evening. Would anyone like to bring in anything else up at this meeting? If not, I'd like to thank the commission for tolerating me for as long as you have. And I'll come back and visit sometime. Okay, thank you for your participation. Meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.